Right now, an entire neighborhood is slipping down a cliff into the ocean. 4 kilometers of hillside have already given way. Homes dangle over a 25-meter drop. Cars swing from broken foundations like objects kicked off a table. And the soil under 25,000 residents keeps shifting. This is not a disaster that happened out of nowhere. It is a disaster that has been happening over and over for 236 years. Why did people choose to live here from the start? Why did local leaders let building go on after every failure? And why does no one know when this landslide will finally end? In southern Sicily, overlooking the Mediterranean, there is a town that for decades appeared solid, calm, and permanent. Niscemi sits on a broad plateau, its streets laid out neatly, its homes built on what looks like firm ground. From above, nothing about it suggests instability. Roads run straight, buildings cluster confidently near the edge. Life carried on with the quiet assumption that the land beneath it all was reliable. But beneath Niscemi, something has been moving for a very long time. In late January 2026, movement accelerated again. After Storm Harry swept across the region and dumped extraordinary amounts of rain in a short period of time, the ground around Niscemi began to fail in ways that could no longer be ignored. Cracks spread across streets, buildings tilted, entire sections of land started to shift. What had once been a slow geological process became an urgent emergency. What you are about to hear explains why scientists say this situation is uncontrollable, and why Storm Harry did not cause the disaster, but simply exposed it. By the end of this video, you will understand why Niscemi is not facing a collapsing cliff, but something far more dangerous, a rotational landslide that may eventually take the entire town with it. Within days of the storm, authorities ordered evacuations. More than 1,600 people were forced to leave their homes. The officially designated red zone expanded to include over 3,000 residents. This was not limited to homes at the visible edge of the slope. Cracking and deformation were detected across an area stretching nearly 3.7 miles around the town. From aerial footage, the damage can look deceptive. The slope appears distant. The drop does not look dramatic, but the vertical displacement reaches roughly 100 feet, and the land is not simply falling away. It is rotating, pulling everything above it along for the ride. To understand why this matters, we need to talk about what kind of landslide this actually is. What is happening in Niscemi is not a rockfall or a surface collapse. It is a rotational landslide, one of the most destructive and persistent forms of slope failure. Instead of sliding straight downhill, a massive block of land moves along a curved, spoon-shaped surface beneath the ground. As it moves, the front drops downward, while the back sinks and cracks, tearing the land apart from the inside. A useful analogy is a slice of cake on a plate. Tilt the plate slightly, soak the cake with water, and instead of sliding cleanly, the cake slowly rolls forward, rotating as it moves. That is what is happening beneath Niscemi, except the cake is an entire town. This is why distance from the edge doesn't mean safety. In rotational landslides, the headscarp, the main crack, always migrates backward. The failure moves uphill. Streets that once felt secure begin to split. Buildings far from the visible slope start tilting. Infrastructure fails before houses collapse, offering subtle warnings that are often mistaken for minor damage. The reason this is happening lies deep underground. Niscemi is built on what geologists call a layered system. The upper layer consists of cemented sands and sandstones, materials that appear strong and stable. That is what gave builders confidence decades ago. But beneath that layer lies weak clay, and clay behaves very differently when water enters the system. When dry, clay can be stiff and supportive. When saturated, it loses strength rapidly. Heavy rainfall turns it into a lubricant. Southern Sicily is particularly vulnerable to this because of episodic intense storms, long wet periods, and poor natural drainage in clay-rich soils. Every major rain event weakens the system a little more. This is not a new discovery. A significant landslide occurred in this area in 1997, clearly mapping zones of instability. In 2006, Italy's official hydrogeological risk plan, known as PAI, classified large parts of Niscemi as high to very high risk. The landslide was not only known, it was documented beneath existing neighborhoods. The failure surface already existed. Time and water were the only missing ingredients. Yet construction continued. Critical roads and buildings were placed directly at the scarp edge. No buffer zones were established. No long-term retreat strategy was implemented. It wasn't ignorance alone. It was a calculated risk, and the physics never changed. In rotational slides, the land loss always migrates backward. History had already proven this here. Now, that history is repeating itself. Storm. Harry did not create the landslide. It simply removed the last remaining shear strength from the clay. The gun was already loaded. The storm pulled the trigger. And once a rotational landslide reaches this scale, there is no engineering solution that can stop it. Retaining walls do not work. Anchors cannot reach stable ground. Drainage can only slow movement temporarily. Rotational slides do not reset. They pause, then reactivate, often growing larger each time. You cannot anchor an entire town. You cannot reverse a curved failure surface that stretches for miles. This is why engineers are no longer talking about fixing Niscemi. They are talking about managed retreat. The danger also is not finished spreading. The main crown crack will continue retreating backward into the town. At the same time, the landslide is widening laterally, particularly toward the north, as saturated clay finds new weak zones. Infrastructure will continue to fail first, with cracked roads, broken pipes, and tilted walls, long before buildings collapse. This is not a single disaster event. It is a slow, predictable, permanent geological process that may continue for decades until the unstable mass is fully exhausted. What has changed now is the speed. Storm Harry forced the truth to the surface. In one blunt sentence, Niscemi was doomed the moment it was built on hard ground, resting on wet clay. The landslide was already there. It just had not finished yet. This is what geologists call a geological trap, stable-looking ground masking deep instability beneath. Nature does not forget, it only waits. For now, monitoring continues. Cracks are mapped, movement is measured, rainfall is watched closely as new storms approach. The land beneath Niscemi keeps moving on its own schedule, indifferent to boundaries, buildings, or plans made decades ago. If you think living near a collapsing town sounds extreme, you should see what else is at risk. Check out the next video on places built on hidden geological traps, because sometimes the ground does not fail suddenly. Sometimes it gives you decades of warning, and the real disaster is choosing not to listen.